Welcome back to Tina Romance Library, where powerful alphas fall hard, and the women they underestimate change everything. Every story here is complete, immersive, and emotion-driven. No cliffhangers, no rushed endings, just full romances you can sink into. So, if you love possessive alphas, strong heroines who don't beg, slow burn tension, emotional payoffs, and stories that actually finish, you're in the right place. I need you to join the pack right now by subscribing. Leave a like if you enjoy immersive romance, and settle in because, once the story begins, we don't stop until the ending. Now, let's get into it. I was furniture. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and nobody even glances your way? When you could set yourself on fire and people would just complain about the smoke? Yeah. That was my entire existence. My name is Sera, and I'm an Omega. But not the kind you read about in those romance novels where the Omega is secretly beautiful and special, and just waiting to be discovered by some gorgeous alpha who sees her true worth. No, I'm the kind of Omega that the universe forgot to give a storyline to. The kind that serves overpriced steaks to people who wouldn't remember my face if their lives depended on it. For 3 years, I'd worked at Ember and Oak, this ridiculously fancy restaurant in the heart of the city, where politicians made shady deals over wine that cost more than my rent, where pack leaders flexed their wealth, and where people like me were essentially moving furniture. Furniture that occasionally brought bread baskets. Being an Omega without a pack is like being a ghost. You exist in the spaces between things. You're there, but you're not really there. Alphas look past you. Betas forget you before you've even left the table. And other Omegas? They either pity you or they're grateful they're not you. I'd learned to be okay with it. Or at least, I'd learned to lie to myself convincingly enough that most days I believed it. I had my tiny apartment with the window that stuck and the radiator that clanged like it was trying to communicate in Morse code. I had my shifts at the restaurant. I had my routine. My safe, predictable, invisible routine. The other servers barely spoke to me. Not out of cruelty, really just indifference. I was the girl who picked up the shifts nobody wanted, who never complained, who never made waves. I was reliable in the way a stapler is reliable. Useful. Forgettable. Sera, table 9 needs water. Marcus, the head server, would bark without looking at me. Sera, someone spilled in the back. Handle it. Sera, you're covering Caroline's section tonight. I'd learned not to argue. What was the point? In a world run by pack hierarchies and alpha dominance, an Omega without connections was nothing. Less than nothing. I was lucky to have a job at all, and everyone knew it, including me. But here's the thing about being invisible: you see everything. You hear everything. When people don't notice you, they forget to guard their words, their expressions, their secrets. I'd become a collector of other people's stories while having none of my own. I knew which alpha was cheating on his mate. I knew which politician was about to be exposed for embezzlement. I knew which pack was struggling financially despite their expensive suits and fake smiles. I saw it all from the shadows, from the spaces between tables, from the invisible place where Omegas like me existed. My wolf hated it. She was small and quiet, like me, but sometimes I felt her rage simmering under my skin. She wanted to be seen. She wanted to matter. She wanted what every wolf wants: a pack, a purpose, a place to belong. We don't need them. I'd whisper to her late at night when the loneliness felt like it might swallow me whole. We're fine on our own. She never believed me. And honestly, neither did I. But I'd gotten good at pretending. Pretending that being alone was a choice. Pretending that I didn't watch families walk by and feel something crack inside my chest. Pretending that when I saw mated pairs, I didn't wonder what it felt like to have someone look at you like you were their entire world. Being an Omega has perks, though. Small ones. Pathetic ones, maybe, but perks nonetheless. No one notices when you steal fries off plates before they go to the table. No one cares if you take the slightly burnt bread that would have been thrown out anyway. And no one, absolutely no one, pays attention to where you go or what you do after your shift ends. Freedom through irrelevance. That was my life. The restaurant was beautiful, I'll give it that. All exposed brick and soft lighting, with candles on every table and this low jazz music that made everything feel like a scene from an old movie. The kind of place where proposals happened and deals were made, and life-changing moments unfolded for people who mattered. I'd wipe down tables and wonder what that felt like. To matter, to have a moment worth remembering. My coworkers thought I was strange, too quiet, too watchful. I'd catch them whispering sometimes, shooting me glances that ranged from curious to concerned to vaguely uncomfortable. But they never asked, never tried to know me, and I never offered. It was easier that way, safer. Because here's what I'd learned in 23 years of being invisible: if you don't let anyone in, they can't leave. If you don't build connections, you can't lose them. If you don't hope for more, you can't be disappointed when more never comes. My wolf disagreed with this philosophy violently, but she didn't get a vote. I'd kept us safe, kept us fed, kept us existing in this little pocket of nothingness. It wasn't much, but it was ours. Until him. Until the night everything changed. Until the night I realized that being invisible was both my greatest protection and my biggest lie. See, I'd gotten comfortable in my ghost life. I'd stopped expecting anything different. I'd stopped looking for it. I'd stopped hoping. And that's exactly when the universe decided to laugh in my face. Because when an alpha looks through you your entire life, you start to believe you're not worth looking at. You start to shrink yourself down into something so small, so insignificant, that even you forget you're there sometimes. You become what everyone expects: nothing. But the thing about being nothing is that you have nothing to lose. And when you have nothing to lose, you notice things other people miss. You see dangers that everyone else is too important, too distracted, too comfortable to see. I'd learned to read people, to read rooms, to feel the shift in energy when something was off. It was a survival skill, really. When you're prey, you develop predator awareness. You have to. That Tuesday night started like any other. I tied my hair back, put on my black uniform, and prepared myself for 6 hours of being a ghost in a room full of people who shimmered with life and power and purpose. I told myself the same lie I told myself every shift. This is fine. You're fine. Everything is fine. My wolf laughed bitterly at that one. And somewhere across the city, an alpha king was getting ready to walk into Ember and Oak, getting ready to walk into my life, getting ready to make me realize that being invisible was about to become impossible. But I didn't know that yet. I was still just Sera, the Omega nobody saw, the girl who stole fries and wiped tables and existed in the spaces between everything that mattered. I had no idea that in less than an hour someone would finally see me, and I had no idea how much I would hate that I wanted him to. The Alpha King walked in. The energy in the restaurant changed before I even saw him. It was like the air pressure dropped, like every wolf in the room suddenly remembered they were prey pretending to be predators. Conversations didn't stop exactly, they just got quieter, more careful, postures straightened. Eyes flickered toward the entrance with a mixture of reverence and fear. I was refilling water glasses at table 12 when I felt it. This pull, this awareness that crawled up my spine and made my wolf lift her head for the first time in months. She was alert, interested, and that scared me more than anything because my wolf had learned, just like I had, not to care. "Is that?" the beta at table 12 whispered to his companion. "Dominic Blackwood," the other confirmed, voice barely audible. The Alpha King. I'd heard of him, of course. Everyone had. He ruled the Western Territories with absolute authority, commanded the largest pack in the region, and had a reputation for being as ruthless as he was strategic. People spoke his name with respect, or terror, sometimes both simultaneously. I told myself not to look. I told myself to keep pouring water, to stay invisible, to do what I did best: exist without existing. I looked anyway, and the world tilted sideways. He was tall. That was the first thing I noticed. But it wasn't just height, it was presence. He moved like gravity bent around him, like reality adjusted itself to accommodate his existence. Dark hair, sharp jawline, and these eyes that seemed to catalog everything in the room within seconds. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than I made in 6 months, and he wore it like armor. His security detail flanked him 4 massive alphas, who looked like they could tear through concrete with their bare hands. But it was him everyone watched, him everyone felt. I forced myself to look away, to focus on my task, to remember that alphas like him didn't see people like me. We weren't even on the same plane of existence, except my wolf was going absolutely feral inside me. "Mate," she whispered. "Mate, mate, mate, mate." "Absolutely not," I hissed under my breath, quiet enough that only she could hear. "Stop it. Stop that right now." But she was howling, clawing, desperate for me to turn around, to look again, to go to him. I gripped the water pitcher so hard my knuckles went white. This was not happening. This could not be happening. The universe was not cruel enough to make an alpha king the literal most powerful wolf in the region my mate. Except apparently, it was exactly that cruel. "Sera." Marcus appeared at my elbow, looking nervous. "He requested table 7. That's your section. Try not to embarrass us, yeah?" Table 7. The corner table with the best view, the most privacy. The table we reserved for people who could buy and sell most of our clientele without blinking. "Sure," I managed, voice steadier than I felt. "No problem." Marcus gave me a skeptical look, probably wondering how an Omega was going to handle serving the Alpha King without melting into a puddle of submission. But he didn't argue, probably because no one else wanted to risk it either. I watched from behind the bar as Dominic Blackwood settled into his seat with the casual confidence of someone who owned every room he entered. His security positioned themselves strategically, 2 at nearby tables, 2 by the exits. Professional, practiced, paranoid, smart. I gave myself exactly 30 seconds to panic. 30 seconds to let my wolf scream and my heart race and my entire sense of reality crumble. Then I shoved it all down into that deep place where I kept everything that hurt too much to feel. I could do this. I'd served hundreds of alphas, thousands of customers. This was just another table, just another shift. The fact that my wolf was convinced this man was my mate was irrelevant. Wolves were wrong all the time. This was probably just some weird hormonal response to his power. Nothing more. I smoothed my apron, grabbed a wine list, and walked toward table 7 like I was walking toward my own execution. Every step closer made it worse. His scent hit me at about 10 feet cedar and smoke and something dark and wild that made my wolf whine with want. By the time I reached the table, I was using every ounce of control I had not to react, not to show anything, not to let him see that he affected me at all. "Good evening," I said, voice professionally pleasant. "My name is Sera. I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I start you with something to drink?" He looked up, and those eyes, silver gray like storm clouds, locked onto mine. The world stopped. I felt it then. The bond, the recognition, the absolute certainty that this wolf, this powerful, dangerous, impossible wolf, was mine in some fundamental, cosmic, completely unfair way. His nostrils flared slightly, scenting me. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or confusion. "Wine," he said, voice deep and controlled. "The 2015 Barolo." "Excellent choice," I replied automatically, proud that my voice didn't shake. "I'll bring that right out." I turned to leave, desperate to escape his presence, to breathe air that wasn't saturated with his scent, to think clearly for just 1 damn second. Wait. The command stopped me mid-step. Not because of alpha authority, I'd gotten good at resisting that, but because something in his tone made my wolf surge forward with desperate hope. I turned back, careful to keep my expression neutral. "Yes?" He studied me for a long moment, and I felt exposed in a way I'd never felt before. Like he was seeing past the uniform, past the Omega exterior, past every wall I'd ever built, straight down to the pathetic, lonely girl underneath, who wanted so badly to matter to someone. "What's your name?" he asked. "Sera," I I repeated, confused. I'd literally just told him, "Your full name." Warning bells went off in my head. Alphas didn't ask Omegas their full names unless they wanted something, unless they were planning something, unless you'd just become visible in ways that were definitely not safe. "Sera Whitlock," I said carefully. "Is there anything else you need?" Another long look. Then, "No, that's all." I escaped to the bar, hands shaking as I poured his wine. This was bad. This was so bad. He'd noticed me. He'd asked my name. He'd looked at me like I was a puzzle he was trying to solve. Being invisible was supposed to keep me safe. Being invisible was the entire plan. "You okay?" Elena, one of the other servers, asked. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," I lied. "Just nervous. It's the Alpha King." She nodded sympathetically. "Don't worry. Men like that don't remember people like us. You'll be fine." Except I knew with bone-deep certainty that wasn't true. Not this time. Not with him. I delivered the wine with steady hands and professional detachment. When I poured, I was hyper-aware of his proximity, of the heat radiating from his body, of the way his fingers brushed the stem of the glass, and I wondered what those hands would feel like. "Stop," I commanded my traitorous brain. "Stop it right now." But as I set the bottle down, his gaze caught mine again, held it, and I saw something there that made my breath catch. Recognition. Interest. The beginning of pursuit. I hated that my heart cared what an alpha thought. I hated that after years of being invisible, the one person who saw me was the one person I could never have. I hated that my wolf was howling with joy, while my brain was screaming danger. Most of all, I hated that when he looked at me like that, like I was something worth seeing, I wanted to let him. But I couldn't. Because wolves like him didn't end up with wolves like me. Because fairy tales weren't real. Because the universe had never been kind to me before, and it sure as hell wasn't going to start now. So I did what I always did. I stepped back, I smiled politely, I became furniture again. Or at least, I tried. His eyes followed me as I walked away. I felt them like a physical touch, warm and heavy and impossible to ignore. And that's when I noticed them. 5 men scattered throughout the restaurant. Wrong postures, wrong scents, wrong everything. My survival instincts, honed from years of being prey, started screaming. Something was very, very wrong. I glanced back at the Alpha King, arrogant, powerful, completely unaware he was about to die. And for reasons I couldn't explain and definitely didn't want to examine, that thought made something protective and fierce and absolutely terrifying wake up inside me. "Mine," my wolf growled. "Ours. Protect. We're not doing this," I whispered. But I was already scanning the room, cataloging threats, calculating angles, already preparing to break every rule that had kept me safe. Already deciding that maybe, just maybe, being invisible wasn't the most important thing anymore. The first gunshot shattered that decision into 1,000 irreversible pieces. The first shot. The sound cracked through the restaurant like reality breaking. For one frozen second, everyone sat in stunned silence, brains struggling to process what their ears had just heard. Then chaos erupted. Screaming, tables overturning, glass shattering, people running in every direction with that particular brand of panic that comes from predators suddenly remembering they're also prey. I dropped behind the bar on instinct, heart hammering against my ribs. 3 more shots fired in rapid succession. I heard bodies hitting the floor security, probably taken out first. Professional. Coordinated. This wasn't random violence. This was an assassination. I risked a glance over the bar top and immediately wished I hadn't. Dominic Blackwood was on his feet, and he was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. His wolf was right there beneath his skin, eyes blazing gold, moving with predatory grace that made the attackers look like children playing at war. He'd already disarmed one shooter, snapped another's arm with a sickening crack, and was advancing on a third. He fought like a god, like violence was an art form and he'd spent centuries perfecting it. But there were 5 of them. And they weren't trying to fight him hand to hand. They were herding him, separating him from any potential help. Using silver bullets, I could smell the acrid burn of it from across the room. 2 of his security were down. The other 2 were engaged with attackers on the opposite side of the restaurant. He was alone. And that's when I saw it. The coordinated movement. The way one shooter kept his distance, rifle steady, waiting. The glint of something on the bullet as he loaded it. Wolfsbane, silver core, designed to kill an alpha. Time slowed. I watched the shooter take aim. Watched Dominic fight, powerful and deadly, unaware of the angle he'd been maneuvered into. Watched the shooter's finger begin to squeeze the trigger, and I felt something break inside me. Some final wall between who I'd been and who I was about to become. "Move," my wolf commanded. I moved. The corkscrew was in my hand before conscious thought caught up. I vaulted the bar, crossed 15 feet of chaos, and drove the corkscrew into the shooter's shoulder, specifically into the cluster of nerves that would temporarily paralyze his arm. The rifle clattered to the floor. The shooter turned toward me with shock and rage, and I saw my death in his eyes. Except Dominic was faster. The Alpha King moved like lightning, like gravity had different rules for him. One moment he was across the room, the next he was there, hand wrapped around the shooter's throat, lifting him off the ground with terrifying ease. "Who sent you?" Dominic's voice was barely human, more growl than words. The shooter laughed, actually laughed, and that's when I smelled it. Poison. He'd taken something. Cyanide, maybe, or something similar. He was already dying. "Long live. The New Order," the shooter choked out. Then he was gone. Just a body held in an Alpha King's hand. Dominic dropped him and turned to me, eyes still blazing gold, chest heaving, covered in blood that mostly wasn't his. We stared at each other across 3 feet of destroyed restaurant and dead assassins, and I felt the weight of what I'd just done crash down on me. I'd saved him. I'd revealed myself. I'd stepped into the light and there was no going back. "You," he started, voice rough. That's when his knees buckled. I caught him, or tried to. He was massive and I was not, so really he just slumped against me as we both hit the ground. That's when I saw the wound, high on his shoulder. The bullet had grazed him, but it had been enough. Silver poisoning, already spreading through his bloodstream, turning his veins black beneath his skin. "No," I breathed, hands shaking as I pressed against the wound. "No, no, no." His hand caught my wrist, grip still strong despite the poison. Those silver-gray eyes focused on me with startling intensity. "Who are you?" he managed. "I'm the Omega who just saved your life," I snapped, fear making me sharp. "Now shut up and listen, because you're dying and I'm the only one who knows how to stop it." His eyes widened slightly. Whether from the information that he was dying or the fact that an Omega had just told an Alpha King to shut up, I couldn't tell. I looked around frantically. The other 2 shooters were down. His remaining security had handled them. Police sirens wailed in the distance. People were crying, hiding, traumatized. "Listen to me," I said urgently, leaning close enough that only he could hear. "The silver is spreading. You need to shift, force it out through your wolf's healing, but you can't do it here. Too public. You have about 15 minutes before you lose consciousness. Your security needs to get you somewhere private. Tell them to induce the shift immediately. Don't let them take you to a hospital. They won't know how to treat wolfsbane silver composite poisoning. Do you understand?" He nodded, but his eyes never left my face. "How do you know?" "It doesn't matter," I interrupted. "What matters is you need to move. Now." His remaining security was suddenly there, pulling him up, supporting his weight. One of them, a female beta with sharp eyes, looked at me with something between suspicion and respect. "Is what she said true?" the beta demanded. "Yes," Dominic said, voice stronger than it should be given the poison coursing through him. "Still looking at me." "Always looking at me." The beta nodded once. "We need to move. Now." They started to pull him toward the exit, but his hand shot out, catching my arm. The touch sent electricity racing across my skin, made my wolf howl with need and fear and things I refused to name. "Your name," he said. "Sera Whitlock." It wasn't a question. It was a claim, a promise, a threat. "I'll find you," he continued. And even dying, even poisoned, he sounded absolutely certain. "We're not finished." "We never started," I replied, proud that my voice was steady. Something flickered in his eyes, amusement maybe, or challenge. Then his security was pulling him away, and I was alone in a restaurant full of destruction and death and witnesses who would definitely remember the Omega who'd moved like a trained killer. I looked down at my hands, covered in his blood, shaking uncontrollably now that the adrenaline was fading. I told myself I didn't care, told myself he was just another alpha, that the bond meant nothing, that I'd saved him because it was the right thing to do, not because my wolf was convinced he was mine. My wolf called me a liar. She was right. I'd felt it when the bullet was aimed at him, that visceral terror, that absolute certainty that I couldn't let him die, that the world would be wrong somehow if he ceased to exist in it. I'd felt seen when he looked at me, truly seen. For the first time in my entire invisible life, someone had looked at me and seen more than furniture, more than an Omega, more than nothing. And it terrified me, because I knew what happened to Omegas, who let themselves be seen by powerful alphas. I knew how those stories ended, and I had no intention of becoming another cautionary tale. So I did what I'd always done. I ran. I slipped out the back entrance while police flooded in through the front. I disappeared into the night, into the shadows, into the invisible spaces where people like me belonged. But I could still feel his touch on my arm, could still smell cedar and smoke on my skin, could still see those silver-gray eyes promising things I couldn't afford to want. "Mine," my wolf whispered. "Ours. We saved him. And now we leave him," I whispered back. But even as I ran, I knew the truth. Knew it with the same certainty I'd known he was in danger. Knew it with the same bone-deep awareness that had made me jump over that bar. I could run. I could hide. I could pretend none of it mattered. But Dominic Blackwood had seen me, had claimed me with those 3 words, "I'll find you." And Alpha Kings didn't make promises they didn't keep. 3 days of sleeping in a different place every night. A motel on the east side, a hostel downtown, the storage room of a closed gym where I used to train years ago. 3 days of looking over my shoulder, jumping at shadows, feeling the constant pressure of being hunted. Because that's what this was, a hunt. I felt him searching. Not physically, not at first, but like a presence at the edge of my awareness. Like standing too close to a fire, you couldn't see the heat, but you felt it on your skin, in your bones, in the way your body instinctively leaned away or toward it depending on whether you wanted to be burned. My wolf wanted to be burned. She was restless, pacing, whining constantly. She didn't understand why we were running from our mate. To her, it was simple. He was ours. We were his. Everything else was just noise. But she was operating on instinct and fairy tales. I was operating on experience and self-preservation. I'd quit my job at Ember and Oak, obviously, sent Marcus a text claiming a family emergency, which wasn't entirely a lie if you counted my wolf's mental breakdown as a family matter. I'd withdrawn what little money I had from my account, enough for maybe 2 weeks if I was careful, and I'd started planning my exit from the city. Vancouver, maybe. Or Portland. Somewhere far enough that an Alpha King's reach wouldn't extend. Somewhere I could disappear again. Except every time I got close to actually leaving, something stopped me. Some invisible tether that pulled tighter the farther I tried to run. The mate bond, probably making itself known in the most inconvenient way possible. I hated it. Hated that my body betrayed me every time I thought about him. Hated that I'd catch his scent on the wind. Impossible. He couldn't be that close and my heart would stutter. Hated that I remembered his voice, deep and rough, saying, "I'll find you," like it was a promise written in starlight and stone. Hated that part of me wanted him to. On the second night, hiding in that depressing hostel with paper-thin walls and questionable stains, I dreamed about him. Not anything explicit, nothing I could blame on base attraction. No, it was worse than that. I dreamed about safety, about his arms around me, solid and warm, about belonging somewhere, to someone, about being seen and wanted and protected. I'd woken up with tears on my face and fury in my heart. "This is what the bond does," I'd told my wolf, voice harsh in the darkness. "It lies. It makes you want things that aren't real. It makes you believe in fairy tales." She'd just sent me an image of silver-gray eyes and the feeling of rightness when he'd touched my arm. Traitor. By the third day, I was exhausted. Not just physically, though sleeping in strange places and constantly moving was taking its toll, but emotionally, mentally, the weight of running, of being alone, of fighting against every instinct screaming at me to turn around and find him, it was crushing. I was sitting in a dingy coffee shop on the outskirts of the city, nursing a cup of something that vaguely resembled coffee, trying to figure out my next move. The bus station was 6 blocks away. I had enough money for a ticket. I could be gone in an hour. That's when I felt it. The air pressure changed, the same way it had in the restaurant, but stronger now, more focused, like a storm rolling in with my name on it. He was close. My wolf surged forward with desperate joy, and I had to physically grip the edge of the table to keep myself in my seat. Every instinct I had screamed at me to run toward him or away from him, I genuinely couldn't tell anymore. I forced myself to stay calm, to breathe, to think. The coffee shop had 2 exits, front and back. I was sitting near the back, strategic positioning I'd learned years ago when invisible meant vulnerable. I could be out the rear door in seconds, lose myself in the industrial district behind the shop, disappear. I should disappear. Except I didn't move, because buried underneath the fear and the resistance and the desperate need to protect myself was something else. Something I barely recognized because I'd felt it so rarely in my life. Curiosity. Why was he searching for me? An alpha king didn't hunt down random omegas, even ones who'd saved his life. A thank you card would have sufficed. Maybe a gift basket, not a 3-day manhunt across the city. Unless the bond wasn't one-sided. Unless he'd felt it too. And if he'd felt it, if he knew what I was to him, then what did he want? To claim me? To mark me? To add me to whatever collection of pack members and subordinates already orbited his powerful existence? Or did he want something else? Something I couldn't even let myself imagine because imagining it would mean hoping, and hope was the most dangerous thing an omega like me could possess. I sat there, frozen in indecision, coffee going cold in my hands, while my wolf howled and my brain calculated escape routes and my heart, traitorous, foolish thing, beat faster at the thought of seeing him again. The decision was made for me when his scent hit me full force. Cedar and smoke and that wild, dark thing underneath that made my wolf roll over in submission even as I forced my spine straight. He was here, in the coffee shop. Maybe had been here for minutes while I sat lost in my spiraling thoughts. I turned slowly, preparing myself for the confrontation, for the alpha dominance, for whatever came next. The shop was empty except for the bored barista scrolling through her phone. No massive, powerful alpha king. No security detail. No one. But his scent was everywhere, thick enough that he'd definitely been here. Recently. On the table in front of me, next to my terrible coffee, was a business card I absolutely hadn't put there. Heavy cardstock, expensive, just a phone number in elegant script, and beneath it, 2 words. Please call. Not a command, not an order, a request. From an alpha king to an omega nobody. I picked up the card with shaking hands, turned it over. On the back, in different handwriting, his handwriting, I knew somehow were 3 more words. I won't chase. My wolf whimpered. Because that was it, wasn't it? The choice. He was giving me a choice. He could find me had clearly just proven that. But he was stepping back, giving me space, giving me power. Alpha kings didn't do that. Alpha kings took. They commanded. They dominated. But Dominic Blackwood had left me a card with please written on it. I sat there for another 20 minutes, card burning in my hands, while I fought the biggest internal battle of my life. Every logical thought said run. Every instinct said call. Every fear said protect yourself. Every hope said trust him. In the end, it was the memory that decided it. Not of the bond or the attraction or any of the romantic nonsense my wolf kept projecting at me, but the memory of his eyes when he'd asked who I was, the genuine confusion mixed with interest, like he'd never seen anything quite like me before. Like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't invisible to him. I pulled out my phone burner, paid in cash, and dialed the number before I could talk myself out of it. He answered on the first ring. Sera. Just my name, but the relief in his voice was palpable. Raw. Real. How did you find me? I asked, proud that my voice didn't shake. I didn't. A pause. I left cards at 70, 3 locations across the city. Coffee shops, diners, bus stations, places you might go. I've been leaving them for 3 days. 73 locations. He'd been to 73 places, not chasing, just leaving invitations, giving me the power to choose. Why? The question came out smaller than I intended. Because you saved my life. Another pause, longer this time, because you're not what I expected. Because when you stabbed that assassin with a corkscrew, my wolf decided you were the most magnificent thing he'd ever seen. Despite everything, I almost laughed. Your wolf has questionable taste. My wolf has excellent taste. His voice dropped, went softer. And I'd like the chance to prove it to you. No pressure, no claims. Just talk to me. Let me thank you properly. You just did. Thanks. We're done. Sera, I can't. The words tore out of me. I can't be what you think I am. I can't be some omega you rescue or claim or add to your collection. I can't. I don't want to rescue you, he interrupted gently. You rescued me, remember? I don't want to claim you. I want to know you. There's a difference. Alpha kings don't want to know omegas. Not really. This one does. Absolute certainty in those 3 words. 1 night. Give me 1 night. Somewhere public if that makes you feel safer. Just talk. And if after that you want to disappear, I'll let you go. You have my word. The word of an alpha means nothing to an omega without a pack. Then I'll swear on my wolf. His voice went serious, formal. I, Dominic Blackwood, Alpha King of the Western Territories, swear on my wolf's honor that I will not harm Sera Whitlock, will not force a claim, will not use alpha dominance against her will, and will let her leave after 1 night if she so chooses. My wolf's life as my bond. I stopped breathing. Wolf oaths were sacred, unbreakable. To swear on your wolf's life meant if you broke that oath, your wolf would die, and you'd live on as human, empty, half alive. No one swore wolf oaths lightly, especially not for an omega they barely knew. Why? I whispered. Why would you do that? Because you're afraid. Quiet, honest. And I need you to not be afraid of me, even if it's just for 1 night. My wolf was screaming yes. My brain was screaming no. My heart was somewhere in between, terrified and hopeful in equal measure. 1 night, I heard myself say. Public place. And I leave when I want. Deal. The relief in his voice was staggering. There's a place. The Dockyard, East Side. Warehouse District. Abandoned now, but there's a cleared space by the water. No one goes there after dark. That's not public. It's open air. You can see everything coming. You can run if you need to. But it's private enough we can talk without an audience. He paused. I'll send you the exact coordinates. 7 o'clock? I should say no. Should hang up. Should run. 7 o'clock. I agreed. I hung up before he could say anything else. Before I could change my mind. Before the terror of what I'd just agreed to could paralyze me. 1 night. I'd give him 1 night. I'd let him thank me. Let him satisfy whatever curiosity the bond had created. Let him see that I was just an omega. Nothing special. Nothing worth hunting across a city for. And then I'd leave. I'd get on that bus and I'd disappear and I'd go back to being invisible. My wolf sent me a feeling of profound skepticism. Shut up, I told her. But as I sat there, cards still in my hand, I couldn't quite shake the feeling that I'd just made a decision that would change everything. and I couldn't decide if that terrified me or thrilled me. He fins me. The dockyard looked like the set of every horror movie I'd ever been too scared to watch. Abandoned warehouses loomed like sleeping giants against the twilight sky. Broken windows reflected the dying sun in shattered fragments. The whole place smelled like rust and salt water and industrial decay, the kind of place where bodies got dumped and questions didn't get asked. Perfect romantic setting, really. I arrived 20 minutes early, old habits from a life where being caught off guard meant being hurt. I'd chosen my position carefully. Back to the water, clear sightlines in all directions, multiple escape routes mapped in my head. I wore running shoes, dark clothes, and I'd tied my hair back. Functional. Prepared. Terrified. My wolf was practically vibrating with excitement, which only made my own anxiety worse. One of us needed to maintain perspective here, and clearly it wasn't going to be her. "This is stupid," I muttered, checking my watch for the 15th time. "This is so stupid. We should leave." But I didn't leave. I stood there, watching the sun set over the industrial wasteland, waiting for an alpha king like some kind of idiot with a death wish and a fairy tale fetish. At exactly 7 o'clock I felt him. That same presence, that same shift in the air, but this time I didn't run. I turned slowly, forcing my breathing to stay even, and watched him approach. He came alone. No security, no entourage, just him walking across the broken concrete like he owned it, which, knowing alpha kings, he probably did. He'd traded the expensive suit for dark jeans and a black shirt, but somehow he looked even more dangerous dressed down, more real, more touchable. I shoved that thought away violently. He stopped about 10 feet away, close enough to talk, far enough to give me space. The setting sun lit him from behind, turning him into something almost mythical. The Alpha King, the most powerful wolf in the territory. "My mate. You came," he said, and that relief was back in his voice. "You swore a wolf oath. I was curious if you'd actually honor it." I kept my voice steady, detached. Most alphas wouldn't. "I'm not most alphas. No, you're an alpha king, which is worse." Something flickered in his expression. Amusement, maybe, or respect. Fair point. We stood there, two wolves from completely different worlds, while the wind off the water carried his scent to me and made my wolf whine with want. I forced my knees to lock, refused to show any sign of weakness. "Thank you," he said finally, "for saving my life. I never got to say that properly." "You're welcome. Are we done?" "No." He took one step closer and I tensed. He froze immediately, hands raised slightly. "Sorry, I won't come closer. I need to understand something." "Understand what?" "How you moved like that. How you knew about wolfsbane's silver composite poisoning. How an Omega Waitress has combat training that would put most of my security to shame." His eyes locked on mine, intense and searching. "Who are you, Sera Whitlock?" "Nobody," I answered automatically. "I'm nobody." "That's a lie. Not aggressive, just factual. You're the woman who saved an Alpha King's life with a corkscrew and disappeared into the night. You're the woman my wolf won't stop thinking about. You're my—" "Don't." The word came out sharp. "Don't say it." He stopped, studied me. "You feel it too." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "What I feel doesn't matter. It's the only thing that matters. To you, maybe. To an Alpha King who's never been told no. But I've been invisible my whole life, and you're about to ruin that." "Good," he said quietly. "You were never meant to be invisible." The certainty in his voice did something dangerous to my carefully constructed walls, made them crack, made me want to believe. "What do you want from me?" I asked, and hated how vulnerable I sounded. "Right now? Just to talk, to understand, to figure out why fate decided to bind an Alpha King to an Omega who looks at him like he's a problem to be solved rather than a prize to be won." "I don't want to be won. I know." He smiled then, small and genuine. "That's what makes you magnificent." I didn't know what to do with that. With him calling me magnificent, with him standing there, giving me space, honoring his oath, looking at me like I was a mystery he actually wanted to solve rather than a conquest he needed to claim. It was terrifying and intoxicating and completely overwhelming. "I don't trust alphas," I said finally, needing him to understand. "I've spent my whole life being invisible to them, being dismissed, being treated like furniture. And now you show up and suddenly I'm visible and important and worth swearing wolf oaths for. And I don't. I can't." "Breathe," he said softly. "Just breathe, Sera." I realized I was shaking, actually shaking. All the fear and hope and confusion coming out in tremors I couldn't control. "If you jump," he said, and I realized I'd backed up almost to the water's edge without noticing. "I jump after you." I laughed. Couldn't help it. That's the worst rescue metaphor I've ever heard. Not a metaphor, a promise. He took another step, slow, telegraphing his movement. "I'm not asking you to trust me yet. I'm asking for one night, a few hours. Let me prove I'm different. And if you're not, then you leave, you disappear, and I'll spend the rest of my life wondering what I did wrong." His expression went serious. "But give me the chance, Sera. Give us the chance." My wolf was howling yes. My brain was screaming run. And my heart, stupid, foolish, desperate thing, was whispering maybe. "One night," I heard myself say. "A few hours, and then I decide. Deal." He smiled, and it transformed his entire face. Made him look younger, less dangerous, more human, more real. And I realized, standing there in an abandoned dockyard with an alpha king who'd sworn his wolf's life to give me a choice, that I'd already made my decision. I just wasn't ready to admit it yet. His estate wasn't what I expected. I'd imagined something cold, corporate, all glass and steel and modern architecture designed to intimidate. The kind of place that screamed power and wealth and untouchable authority. Instead, he brought me to something that felt almost alive. The main house sat on 20 acres of forested land just outside the city limits. Stone and wood construction that looked like it had grown out of the earth rather than been built on it. Warm lights glowed in windows. I could hear water running somewhere, a stream maybe, or a fountain. And the whole place was saturated with pack scent. Not just his, but dozens of wolves, families, children even. This wasn't a fortress. This was a home. "I thought Alpha Kings lived in penthouses," I said as his car pulled up the long driveway. "You know, high above the peasants." He smiled, parking near the entrance. "I did, for about 6 months. Hated every second of it." He gestured to the house. "This belonged to my grandfather. He built it when pack meant something more than power structure, when it meant family." Something in his voice made my chest tight. Loss, longing, the kind that came from remembering better times. "How many live here?" I asked. 43 wolves, give or take. Pack members who wanted proximity to leadership, families who needed protection, a few elders who refused to live anywhere else. He looked at me carefully. "Is that okay? I can take you somewhere more private if—" "No." The word came out faster than I intended. "No, this is good." Because crowds meant safety. Crowds meant witnesses. Crowds meant he couldn't do anything I didn't want him to do, and I'd still have escape routes if things went wrong. Except as we walked toward the entrance, I realized escape was the last thing on my mind. The front door opened before we reached it, and a woman stepped out. Late 50s, silver streaking through dark hair, with the kind of presence that suggested she could either hug you or destroy you depending on her mood. Beta, my wolf identified. "Strong one." "About time," she said, eyeing me with open curiosity. "The whole pack's been buzzing about the mysterious Omega who saved the Alpha King's life. I was beginning to think you were a myth." "Margaret runs the house," Dominic explained. "Also runs my life, if we're being honest." "Someone has to," Margaret replied dryly. Then to me, gentler, "You're welcome here, Sera Whitlock. Any friend of Dominic's is family. Friend. Not mate. Not possession. Friend." I nodded, throat suddenly tight. "Thank you." As we entered, I felt eyes on us immediately. Wolves appeared from various rooms, some curious, some cautious, a few openly suspicious. They didn't approach, but they watched, evaluated, tried to figure out what an unknown Omega was doing with their Alpha King. I felt Dominic tense beside me, felt his wolf rise to the surface, protective and possessive even though he hadn't said a word. A younger beta male, maybe mid-20s, stepped forward with what I recognized as calculated boldness. Alpha, is this wise? An unknown Omega, no background check, no pack affiliation. Careful, Derek. Dominic's voice dropped to that dangerous register that made my wolf want to bare her throat. You're about 3 seconds from crossing a line you don't want to cross. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking, Derek persisted, though his confidence was wavering. After the attack, bringing in an outsider, she stopped the attack. Dominic's voice could have cut glass. She saved my life while my own security failed. So unless you'd like to compare combat effectiveness, I suggest you shut your mouth and show some respect. The room went very, very quiet. Derek's face flushed, but he had enough sense to lower his eyes. My apologies, Alpha. Not to me. Dominic didn't move, but somehow he seemed to fill more space. To her. Derek's jaw clenched, but he turned to me. My apologies, Miss Whitlock. I should have let it go. Should have accepted gracefully. Should have let Dominic's authority smooth everything over. Instead, I heard myself say, "You're not wrong to be suspicious. If I were Pack, I'd be questioning this too. The timing is convenient. Unknown Omega appears, saves the Alpha, gets brought into his home. It looks like a setup." Dominic's head snapped toward me, surprise clear in his expression. I continued, meeting Derek's eyes directly. "But I'm not a threat. I'm just someone who was in the wrong place at the right time, or the right place at the wrong time, depending on how you look at it. And I don't want anything from your Alpha except the conversation he promised me. After that, I'll be gone, and you can all go back to normal." Silence. Then Derek's expression shifted, suspicion giving way to reluctant respect. Fair enough. The tension in the room eased fractionally. A few wolves nodded. Margaret smiled like I'd passed some kind of test. Dominic looked at me like I'd just done something completely unexpected and utterly perfect. "She is under my protection," he said, addressing the room but never taking his eyes off me. "That is not negotiable. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. Are we clear?" A chorus of "Yes, Alpha" rippled through the assembled wolves. "Good. Now everyone stop lurking and give the woman some space." He placed a hand on my lower back, gentle, not controlling, and guided me toward a hallway. "Come on, let's get you settled." As we walked away, I heard Margaret say something to the gathered wolves, her voice carrying just enough. "I like her. She's got spine. She's got something," another voice agreed. "Question is what the Alpha's going to do about it." My wolf preened. I told her to calm down. Dominic led me to a wing of the house that was quieter, more private. He stopped at a door, opened it to reveal a bedroom that was somehow both luxurious and comfortable. Big bed, soft lighting, windows that overlooked the forest. A bathroom door stood ajar, and I could see marble and what looked like a massive soaking tub. "This is yours," he said, "for as long as you want it. Door locks from the inside. There's a balcony if you need air. And if you need anything, press this." He showed me a small button by the bed. "It'll page Margaret, not me. I won't come unless you ask." The consideration in that statement did something dangerous to my defenses. "Thank you," I said quietly. He nodded, started to leave, then paused at the door. "Sera? What you said down there, about being gone after our conversation, did you mean it?" I should say yes, should maintain my boundaries, should keep the exit strategy clear. "I don't know," I admitted instead. "Ask me again in the morning." Something fierce and hopeful flashed in his eyes. "I can work with that." After he left, I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to process everything. The house, the pack, the way he'd defended me without making me feel helpless, the way he'd given me space while making it clear I was protected. This wasn't how Alpha Kings were supposed to behave. This wasn't how any of this was supposed to go. And that scared me more than anything else, because it would be so easy to want this, to want him, to want to belong somewhere that felt like home instead of just shelter. But wanting things had never worked out well for me before. My wolf sent me a feeling of profound exasperation, along with an image of Dominic's face when he'd looked at me downstairs. Like I was a puzzle he wanted to solve, like I was worth the effort. One night, I whispered to her. We agreed to one night. Don't get attached. She laughed at me, and deep down I knew she was right too. He tends my wounds. The knock on my door came an hour later, soft and respectful. It's Margaret, a voice called. I've got some clothes for you, dear, and the alpha asked if you'd join him for dinner. Private. His study. But only if you're comfortable. I opened the door to find Margaret holding a stack of folded clothes and wearing an expression that was part motherly concern, part knowing amusement. I'm not sure I have anything you'd want to wear to dinner with an alpha king, I said, gesturing to my dark jeans and worn shirt. Hence the clothes. She handed them over. Nothing fancy, just comfortable. Dominic's not big on formality when it's just family. She paused meaningfully. Or important guests. I took the clothes, soft leggings, an oversized sweater that looked incredibly comfortable. Thank you. The study is down the hall, last door on the left. Dinner's at 8, but he said come whenever you're ready. No pressure. Margaret smiled. He's nervous, you know. I've never seen him nervous before. It's rather endearing. She left before I could process that information. An alpha king. Nervous. Because of me. My wolf was practically doing backflips. I showered because that tub was calling to me, and I hadn't had access to anything beyond basic motel showers in days. The hot water felt like heaven, washing away the grime and tension and fear of the last 3 days. When I finally emerged, I felt almost human again. Almost normal. I dressed in the clothes Margaret had brought. They fit perfectly, which should have been weird but somehow wasn't. The sweater smelled faintly of lavender and something else. Pack. Home. I found the study at exactly 8 o'clock because I'm nothing if not punctual when I'm terrified. Dominic answered my knock immediately, and I had to force myself not to stare. He'd showered too, changed into comfortable clothes, gray Henley, dark pants. His hair was still slightly damp. He looked less like an alpha king and more like a man. Just a man. Nervous, hopeful, real. Come in, he said, stepping back. The study was beautiful floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a fireplace with actual fire crackling, comfortable furniture arranged for conversation rather than intimidation. A small table by the window held covered dishes, wine, water. I wasn't sure what you liked, he said, gesturing to the food, so I had them prepare options. There's salmon, chicken, vegetarian pasta. Or if you hate all of that, I can have something else brought up. This is perfect, I said, surprised by how much I meant it. We settled at the table, and for a few minutes, we just ate. The food was incredible. Nothing like the fancy restaurant cuisine I'd served for years. This was comfort food, real food, the kind that made you feel cared for. How's your shoulder? I asked, noticing he moved it carefully. Healing. Your instructions saved my life. The pack doctor said another 10 minutes and the silver would have reached my heart. He met my eyes. So thank you. Again. I know I keep saying it, but you're welcome. Again. I set down my fork. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why didn't you let your security take me into custody? After the attack, I mean. Standard protocol would be to detain anyone involved until you could verify their story. But you just let me go. He was quiet for a moment, considering. Honestly, I don't know. Instinct, maybe. My wolf trusted you immediately, which should have been concerning but felt right. He paused. And you looked terrified. Not of the attack. Of me. Of what might happen if you stayed. I couldn't. I didn't want to be another reason you were afraid. The honesty in that statement cracked something in my chest. I wasn't afraid of you, I admitted. I was afraid of myself. of what I felt when I saw you in danger, of how much I cared about saving you when I shouldn't have cared at all. His eyes darkened, intense. The bond. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just an idiot who can't mind her own business. He smiled. Well, I'm grateful for your poor boundaries. We talked then. Really talked. He asked about my training. I deflected, not ready to explain that part of my past yet. I asked about running a pack. He opened up about the pressure, the politics, the loneliness of leadership. We traded stories, careful at first, then more freely as the wine loosened our tongues and the fire warmed the room. I learned he'd lost his parents young, that he'd never wanted to be Alpha King but had inherited the title and the responsibility and the crushing weight of expectations, that he collected old books and terrible action movies in equal measure, that he was terrified of failing the wolves who depended on him. He learned I'd been alone since I was 16, that I'd taught myself to fight because being weak meant being hurt, that I read romance novels ironically but cried at the happy endings anyway, that I was terrified of being trapped, of losing the freedom I'd fought so hard to build. That's why you run, he said softly. Not from me, from cages. Every relationship is a cage for an omega, I replied. Every bond, every pack, it's just a prettier prison. It doesn't have to be. That's what they all say. Until it is. He set down his wine, leaned forward. Sera, I can't promise I'll never disappoint you. I can't promise this will be easy or simple or anything like what you're used to. But I can promise you'll never be a prisoner. Not here. Not with me. You'll always have a choice. You can't promise that. You're an Alpha King. Your life is pack and politics and responsibility. There's no room for choices in that world. Then we'll make room. He reached across the table, stopped just short of touching my hand, asking permission with the gesture. Let me prove it to you. Stay. Not forever. Just a few days. See what this could be. I should say no. Should run. Should protect myself. Instead, I closed the distance between our hands. Let my fingers brush his. The contact was electric. Literally. A spark of static jumped between us. But it wasn't static. It was bond. It was recognition. It was my wolf and his wolf saying finally, finally home. We both gasped. Both pulled back fractionally, then stopped. Stared at each other across the small distance, breathing in sync, hearts racing in tandem. If you bite me, I said, voice shaking, I'm charging you for emotional damages. He laughed, startled and genuine. Noted. What's your rate? Exorbitant. You probably can't afford me. Try me. The moment stretched, tightened. His eyes dropped to my lips. Mine dropped to his. The air between us felt thick with possibility, with want, with the terrifying potential of what could happen if we just leaned forward, just closed the gap, just stopped fighting what every instinct screamed was inevitable. He moved first. Slow, careful, giving me time to pull away. I didn't pull away. His hand came up, cupped my face with a gentleness that seemed impossible from someone so powerful. His thumb brushed my cheekbone, and I felt that touch everywhere. My wolf howled, my skin tingled, my heart forgot how to beat normally. Sera, he breathed, and my name in his voice was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. Yeah? Can I? A crash from somewhere in the house shattered the moment, followed by shouting, running footsteps. We both jerked apart, the spell broken. Dominic was on his feet instantly, body between me and the door, protective instinct overriding everything else. Margaret burst in without knocking, face pale. Alpha, we have a problem. The bond awakens. The problem was the council. Not just any council, the High Council of Alphas, the governing body that supposedly kept pack politics civilized and prevented all-out territory wars. 7 alphas, each controlling their own region, meeting quarterly to make decisions that affected every wolf in the country. And apparently, they'd decided to make an unannounced visit to Dominic's estate. Tonight. Right now. They can't do that, I said, following Dominic and Margaret through the halls toward the main entrance. Can they? Technically, they can do whatever they want, Dominic replied, voice tight with controlled anger. Practically, this is a power play. They want to catch me off guard, see how I react under pressure. Why now? Because someone told them about you. He shot me a look. An unknown Omega, no pack affiliation, staying in the Alpha King's personal residence 3 days after an assassination attempt. They'll want answers. They'll want to know if you're a security risk. My stomach dropped. I should leave. No. The word was final. Absolute. You're under my protection. You stay. Dominic? No, Sera. He stopped walking, turned to face me fully. I know what you're thinking. That you'll disappear, make this easier for me, take the problem away. But you're not a problem. You're... He stopped, jaw clenching. You're important, and I don't sacrifice important things for politics. You might have to. Then I'll deal with the consequences. But I won't deal with losing you before I've even had the chance to know you. The rawness in his voice, the fierce protectiveness, the absolute refusal to treat me as disposable, it did something to every defense I'd ever built. Made them crumble. Made me want to believe that maybe, just maybe, this could be different. Margaret cleared her throat. They're in the formal sitting room, all 7 of them, and they brought their own security. Of course they did. Dominic's expression hardened into something cold and political. The Alpha King mask sliding into place. Sera, you don't have to come. You can stay in your room and I'll handle this. I should take that option. Should hide. Should stay invisible. No, I heard myself say. If they're here because of me, I should be there. Something fierce and proud flashed in his eyes. Stay close to me. Let me do the talking. And if things get tense, trust me. We entered the formal sitting room, and I immediately understood why Dominic preferred the casual family areas. This room was all intimidation and power display, high ceilings, expensive furniture arranged for maximum political maneuvering, lighting designed to cast dramatic shadows. 7 alphas sat in a semicircle, each radiating authority and barely concealed aggression. Their combined presence was overwhelming, designed to make lesser wolves submit automatically. I felt my wolf want to crouch, to lower her eyes, to show belly. I forced my spine straight and met their gazes one by one. Dominic's hand found my lower back, steadying, supporting. Gentlemen, he said, voice cool and controlled. To what do I owe this unexpected visit? The eldest alpha, silver-haired, scarred, ancient authority in every line spoke first. We heard about the attempt on your life, Dominic. The council wanted to verify your well-being personally. At midnight, without warning, with full security detail. Dominic's tone suggested he didn't believe a word. Your concern is touching. Another alpha, younger, sharp-eyed, leaned forward. We also heard about your house guest, an Omega, unknown origin, convenient timing. Her name is Sera Whitlock, Dominic said evenly, and she saved my life. So you say. So I know. The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. Is there a question you'd like to ask? Or did you travel across the territory just to imply my judgment is compromised? The eldest alpha raised a hand, placating. Peace, Dominic. We simply want to understand the situation. 3 assassination attempts in 6 months, and suddenly an unknown Omega appears and stops the 4th. You understand why we're curious. Curious? Is that what we're calling interrogation now? I felt the tension ratcheting higher, felt Dominic's wolf rising to meet the challenge, felt the council pushing, testing, trying to find weakness they could exploit. And I realized what this was really about. Not me, not the assassination attempt, but Dominic himself. They wanted to see if the bond, if I made him vulnerable, made him weak, made him less fit to lead. I can answer your questions, I said quietly. Every eye in the room snapped to me. Dominic's hand tightened fractionally on my back, warning or support, I wasn't sure. Can you now? The sharp-eyed alpha smiled, and it wasn't friendly. Then perhaps you can explain how a waitress happens to have combat training sophisticated enough to take down professional assassins. I learned from experience. What kind of experience? The kind that teaches you that being weak gets you hurt. Being invisible keeps you alive. And sometimes, neither is enough, so you learn to fight. I met his eyes directly. Any other questions? Your pack affiliation. I have none. Family? None living. Previous residence? Multiple. I move frequently. The alpha leaned back, expression calculating. A drifter, no connections, no history, and we're supposed to believe you just happened to be in the right place at the right time to save the Alpha King? Believe what you want, I replied. The truth doesn't require your validation. Dominic made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. The eldest alpha studied me with eyes that had seen decades of wolf politics. You're not what I expected. Few people are. Indeed. He turned his attention to Dominic. The council has concerns about your judgment, about potential security risks, about the complications an unmated Omega might create in your position. Note those concerns, Dominic said flatly, and then disregard them. Sera is under my protection. That's not up for council debate. Everything about the Alpha King's life is council business, not this. Dominic's voice carried alpha command that made even the other alphas shift uncomfortably. Not her. Draw whatever line you need to draw, but she's on my side of it. The room went very quiet. This was the moment, the challenge, the choice between pack politics and personal conviction. The eldest alpha broke the silence. Very well. The council will reserve judgment. For now. He stood, and the others followed. But Dominic, consider carefully. Bonds can be beautiful. They can also be chains. Make sure you know which you're forging. They left, taking their security and their thinly veiled threats with them. The moment the door closed, Dominic's composure cracked. He turned to me, hands coming up to frame my face, eyes searching mine with desperate intensity. Are you okay? I'm fine, I assured him. You were perfect. I almost started a political war over you, I noticed. And I'd do it again. He said it like a confession, like a vow. I'd burn every bridge, destroy every alliance, lose everything political I've built, and I'd do it again to keep you safe. My heart stopped, started again, beat in a rhythm that felt like his name. That's insane, I whispered. Probably. You barely know me. I know enough. The bond is making you irrational. The bond is making me honest. His forehead pressed against mine, breath mingling with mine. I've been alone my whole life, Sera, surrounded by hundreds of wolves, and completely alone. And then you appeared, stabbing assassins and arguing with councils and looking at me like I'm just a man, not an Alpha King, just me. You are just you, I said, hands coming up to grip his forearms, anchoring myself. The title doesn't change that. It changes everything. You know it does. Then we'll figure it out. The words came out before I could stop them, before I could protect myself. If you meant what you said about choices, about freedom, about this being different, then we'll figure it out together. His eyes blazed. You're staying? I'm staying. Terrifying. True. At least for a while. At least to see if... I didn't get to finish. His lips found mine, and the world ignited. The kiss was everything and nothing like I'd imagined. Gentle but desperate, careful but consuming. His hands in my hair, mine fisted in his shirt, both of us trying to get closer, to merge, to become something together that we couldn't be apart. The bond flared between us. Not just connection, but completion. Like two halves of something finding each other after lifetimes of being broken. When we finally pulled apart, breathless and shaking, his eyes were gold, and mine probably were too. Mine, his wolf growled through him. Ours, my wolf agreed. And for the first time in my life, I didn't want to run from that truth. The betrayal revealed. The alarm started shrieking at 4 a.m. I woke from the first real sleep I'd had in days to chaos lights flashing, wolves shouting, the sound of organized evacuation echoing through the estate. Dominic was already out of bed, throwing on clothes. We'd fallen asleep in his study, wrapped around each other on the couch after hours of talking and kissing and carefully not taking things farther than either of us was ready for. What's happening? I demanded, pulling on my shoes. Breach, he said tersely, strapping on weapons with practiced efficiency. Multiple points. Professional coordination. My blood ran cold. The council. Not directly, but definitely their timing. He grabbed my hand. Come on, we're evacuating. Margaret met us in the hallway, already directing families toward exits. West Wing is compromised, taking everyone through the tunnels. Tunnels? I asked. Every pack house has escape routes, Dominic explained, pulling me through the organized chaos. Standard protocol for... An explosion rocked the building. Close. Too close. They're not trying to kill, I realized, analyzing the attack pattern. They're hurting, forcing specific evacuation routes. Dominic's expression turned grim. They want me isolated. Then we don't give them that. Margaret's voice was steel. Alpha stays with the pack. We evacuate together. Margaret. Not negotiable. You die, the pack dies. You live, we rebuild. I saw the conflict on his face. The need to protect warring with the need to lead. The alpha instinct fighting political reality. She's right, I said quietly. You can't fight this alone. I can't risk the pack. You can't save the pack if you're dead. Another explosion. Screams from somewhere in the house. The sound of walls collapsing. Dominic made a decision. Everyone to the tunnels. Now, full evacuation. No one stays behind. Wolves moved with practiced precision. Families supporting each other. The strong helping the weak. It was beautiful and terrifying, this pack, this family, functioning like a single organism under threat. We were almost to the tunnel entrance when I felt it. That awareness, that pressure. Wait, I grabbed Dominic's arm. Something's wrong. Everything's wrong. No, the pattern. The explosions are timed wrong. They should be driving us faster, creating more panic. But they're giving us time, like they wanted us all in one place. The tunnels, I breathed. They're going to collapse the tunnels. Dominic's eyes widened with horror. He spun toward Margaret. Stop the evacuation. Everyone out of the tunnels now. But it was too late. The tunnels were already full of wolves, hundreds of them, packed into the underground passages. The rumble started small, grew into a roar. The ground shook. I heard screaming. And then Dominic was running, not away from danger, but toward it, toward the tunnel entrance, toward his pack. What are you doing? I shouted after him. They need me. You'll die. Then I die. He turned back, face anguished. I can't. I won't leave them. I know. I was running after him, keeping pace. So we don't leave them. We save them together. Sera. No. We don't have time to argue. I grabbed his hand. You're the Alpha King. Be the king. Save your pack. Something in his expression shifted, hardened, focused. We reached the tunnel entrance just as the first support beam began to crack. Wolves were streaming out, panicked, but too many were still inside. Dominic's power flooded the area, pure alpha command that froze every wolf in place. Move, he roared. Exit single file. Strong wolves help the weak. No panic. Move. The pack responded instantly, panic transforming into coordinated action, but the tunnel was collapsing. We had seconds, not minutes. I saw the structural weakness, saw the load-bearing column that was about to fail, saw the domino effect it would create. There, I pointed. If we can stabilize that column for 30 seconds. On it. Dominic shifted, partial transformation, using his enhanced strength to brace the failing support. I ran to help, my smaller wolf adding what strength I could. It wasn't enough. The column was buckling, and there were still 50 wolves in the tunnel. Sera, Dominic gritted out, you need to run. Now. Shut up. That's an order. I don't take orders well. You might have noticed. Despite everything, he almost smiled. I definitely noticed. The column cracked. We both braced harder, muscles screaming, wolves begging us to hold. If we die, I gasped. I'm going to be so annoyed. Noted. His hand found mine in the darkness. Squeezed. But we're not dying. Not today. Optimistic. Stubborn. That too. The last wolf cleared the tunnel. Margaret screaming for us to move. The column giving way. Varan. The tunnel collapsed behind us in a cascade of destruction, but we made it. Barely. Both of us covered in dust and debris, alive by inches. Dominic pulled me into his arms, held me so tight I couldn't breathe and didn't care. "Don't ever do that again," he growled. "Do what? Save your life? Kind of becoming a habit." "I'm serious. So am I." I pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "I told you. You refused to leave me. I refused to run. We're stuck with each other." His eyes blazed gold. "Good." He kissed me there, in front of his entire pack, covered in dust and defiant in the face of whoever was trying to destroy us. And I kissed him back, choosing him, choosing this, choosing to believe that maybe love wasn't always a cage. Sometimes it was a home. Even if that home was currently being blown up by political rivals. Details. We fight together. The attackers came at dawn. 18 wolves. All professional fighters. All coordinated with military precision. They'd waited for the tunnel collapse to scatter us, to separate the alpha from his pack, to create the chaos they needed to finish what the restaurant assassins had started. They hadn't counted on us regrouping. Hadn't counted on Dominic's fury. Hadn't counted on me. We stood in the courtyard, what was left of it after the explosions. Dominic at the center, his remaining security forming a perimeter, pack members who could fight taking defensive positions. And me, right beside him, ignoring every survival instinct that screamed I should hide. "You need to get to safety," Dominic said, eyes never leaving the tree line where shadows moved with predatory intent. "We've had this conversation. I didn't like it the first time either. Sera, I know 17 ways to kill someone with improvised weapons. I've survived things that would break most wolves, and I'm not leaving you." I picked up a broken piece of rebar from the destroyed fountain, tested its weight. "So either accept that I'm fighting, or waste time arguing while they get into position." His jaw clenched. Then, "Stay close. Follow my lead. I was thinking you could follow mine." Despite everything, the danger, the fear, the very real possibility we were about to die, he smiled. "Compromise. We lead together." The first wave hit hard and fast. 6 wolves, transformed, coming from 3 angles simultaneously. Standard pack tactics designed to overwhelm through numbers and force. Dominic met them with the raw power of an alpha king. He was magnificent in his fury, all controlled violence and devastating efficiency. Each movement precise, calculated to inflict maximum damage with minimum exposure. But he was fighting their fight, playing their game. "Wait," I called, seeing the pattern. "They're herding you toward the west side. There's something there they want you near." He adjusted immediately, pivoting to force the attackers to alter their approach. 2 wolves overextended, compensating for his unexpected movement. I took the opening. Rebar through the first one's shoulder, not fatal, but incapacitating. Sweep the legs on the second. They went down hard. Dominic's eyes flashed gold with pride and possession. "Nice. I have my moments." The second wave came smarter. They'd seen us fight, seen us coordinate, so they split their focus half on Dominic, half on me. Trying to separate us, divide our attention. Big mistake. Because what they didn't understand was that we weren't just 2 fighters occupying the same space. We'd become something synchronized. He'd move left, I'd cover right. I'd spot a weakness, he'd exploit it. We communicated in glances and breath, and the kind of awareness that came from the bond humming between us. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was everything. A massive beta broke through the line, heading straight for me with single-minded determination. Kill the Omega, break the Alpha's focus. Textbook strategy. I braced, calculating angles, preparing to dodge. Dominic intercepted with a roar that shook the ground. His wolf fully surfaced, eyes blazing, every tooth bared in primal fury. The sound he made wasn't human, wasn't civilized, wasn't anything approaching controlled. It was a mate, protecting what was his. The beta didn't stand a chance. Dominic tore through him like he was nothing, All that political sophistication and careful leadership stripped away to reveal the predator underneath. And he didn't stop. His wolf had tasted threat to me, and now he was hunting, eliminating anything that could hurt me with brutal, efficient rage. "Dominic," I called, watching him lose himself to instinct. "Dominic, I'm okay. I'm safe." He didn't respond, didn't hear. Too far gone into protective fury. I did the only thing I could think of. I ran to him, dodged his security trying to protect me from him, and placed my hand on his chest. "I'm here," I said quietly, directly into his wolf's awareness. "I'm safe. You saved me. Now I need you to come back." His eyes locked on mine, gold fading slowly back to silver gray, reason returning. "Sera," he breathed, and his hand came up to cup my face like he was verifying I was real. "Whole. Alive. I'm okay, but we're not done yet." I gestured to the remaining attackers, regrouping for another assault. "I need my partner, not my berserker." Something in his expression shifted, cleared. He pressed his forehead to mine for one brief moment. Together. The third wave never got close, because by then, the pack had mobilized. Wolves who'd evacuated were returning, armed and furious that someone had attacked their home. Margaret coordinated them with the precision of a general, creating defensive formations that turned our vulnerability into strength. And Dominic and I fought at the center of it all, not as Alpha and Omega, not as king and subject, but as equals, as partners, as something the attackers clearly hadn't prepared for. I called out strategies. He executed them with devastating efficiency. He spotted threats. I neutralized them before they could manifest. We moved like water, like shadow, like two parts of the same weapon. It was over in minutes that felt like hours. The remaining attackers retreated those who could still move. The courtyard was destroyed, wounded wolves everywhere, the estate burning in places. But we'd held. We'd survived. Dominic pulled me against him, both of us shaking with adrenaline and relief and the aftermath of violence. "You were incredible," he said into my hair. "We were incredible," I corrected. Together, he agreed. And I felt it then. The shift, the certainty. This wasn't just survival anymore. This wasn't just bond or attraction or political convenience. This was choice. This was partnership. This was love. Even if I wasn't quite ready to say it out loud yet. The final enemy falls. The main villain revealed himself 2 hours later, when we were exhausted and wounded and thought the worst was over. He walked through the destroyed courtyard like he owned it, flanked by the last of his forces, fewer now, but fresh, while we were depleted. He was older, scarred, with the kind of presence that suggested decades of political maneuvering and ruthless ambition. Alpha Marcus Chen, council member, Dominic's supposed ally. "I had hoped it wouldn't come to this," Marcus said, voice carrying across the rubble, "that you'd die in the tunnels, or in the initial attack. Clean, simple. But you always were stubborn, Dominic." "Marcus," Dominic's voice was ice. "I should have known. The assassination attempts, the council visit, all you. Not just me, half the council, actually. We've grown tired of your progressive ideals, your weakness for the common wolves, your refusal to use the power you inherited." Marcus smiled. "And now this. An unmated omega, an unknown variable. You've become a liability. So you tried to kill me. I tried to save the pack structure from your inevitable destruction. But you survived. Again." His eyes slid to me. "Because of her, the little invisible omega who keeps interfering." I felt Dominic tense beside me, felt his wolf rise in protective fury. "Here's what happens now," Marcus continued. "You step down, peacefully, denounce your claim to the Alpha King title, and maybe I'll let you and your pet Omega live out your lives in obscurity. And if I refuse, then I kill you both, along with every wolf in this pack who still claims loyalty to you." He gestured, and his forces moved into position. "You're wounded, outnumbered, your pack is scattered. Be smart, Dominic. Surrender." I felt Dominic calculating, saw him weighing options, assessing odds, preparing to sacrifice himself to save his pack. "No," I said quietly. Both alphas looked at me. "You're not surrendering," I continued, meeting Dominic's eyes. "And you're not sacrificing yourself. We're ending this. Now. Sera, the numbers are irrelevant." I turned to Marcus. "You made a mistake." "Did I?" Marcus laughed. "What mistake was that, little Omega? You assumed I was just the Alpha's weakness. You never considered I might be his weapon." I moved before anyone could react. Not toward Marcus, too obvious, too expected, but toward his second-in-command, the wolf controlling the tactical positioning of his forces. The rebar was still in my hand. I used it. The second went down with a strangled yelp, and suddenly Marcus's careful formation dissolved into chaos. Wolves reacting without coordination, without leadership, without the strategic mind that had been directing them. Dominic didn't waste the opening. He launched at Marcus with everything he had, all that Alpha King power focused into pure, devastating attack. They collided like titans, the impact shaking the ground. Two alphas, both powerful, both fighting for everything. But Marcus was fresh. Dominic was wounded, exhausted, running on fumes and fury. I saw it happening, saw Dominic slowing, saw Marcus gaining advantage, saw the killing blow coming. Time slowed. Every self-preservation instinct I had screamed at me to stay back, stay safe, stay invisible. I ran forward anyway. I didn't have alpha strength, didn't have political power, didn't have anything except stubbornness and desperation and absolute refusal to watch my mate die. What I did have was speed and precision, and the element of surprise that came from being underestimated my entire life. I hit Marcus from the side, disrupting his attack just enough that Dominic could counter. My impact didn't hurt the powerful alpha, barely registered really, but it bought seconds. Seconds were enough. Dominic's hand found Marcus's throat. Silver flashed a blade, pulled from somewhere. One precise movement. Mako's chen fell. The courtyard went silent. Dominic stood over his former ally's body, chest heaving, covered in blood and ash, looking every inch the Alpha King he was born to be. Then he turned to me, and that fierce expression melted into something softer, something odd. "You saved me," he said. "Again. Someone has to keep you alive," I replied, trying for light, but my voice shook. "You're terrible at self-preservation." He crossed to me in 3 strides, pulled me into his arms, and kissed me like I was oxygen and he'd been drowning. When we finally broke apart, his remaining forces were kneeling, not in submission and respect, in recognition of what we'd done, what we'd become. I wasn't invisible anymore, I realized, looking at the assembled wolves, at the pack that had fought beside us, at the wolves who were seeing me, truly seeing me for the first time. I was chosen. By him, by them, by fate, and for the first time in my life, being seen didn't terrify me. It felt like coming home. The choice. The aftermath was brutal in its bureaucracy. Council delegations arrived. Investigations were launched. Bodies were counted, damages assessed, statements recorded. The political machinery that governed pack life ground into motion, processing the attempted coup and its violent resolution. Through it all, Dominic was the Alpha King commanding, decisive, politically savvy, in ways that reminded me he hadn't survived this long by accident. He navigated council politics and territorial disputes and power vacuums with the same precision he'd used in combat, and he made sure I was beside him for all of it. Not behind him, not hidden away for my safety. Beside him, equal. It took 3 days to stabilize everything. 3 days of constant meetings and negotiations and careful positioning. 3 days where we barely had time to sleep, let alone talk about what had happened between us. On the 4th day, as sunset painted the sky orange and gold, Dominic found me in the garden, the one part of the estate that hadn't been destroyed. I was sitting on a stone bench, finally allowing myself to feel the exhaustion that had been building. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey yourself." I looked up at him. "Is it done? Are we safe?" "For now. The council has accepted my account of events, Marcus's co-conspirators have been dealt with. The pack is rebuilding. He sat beside me, close enough to touch but not touching. We're safe. Good. Silence settled between us. Not uncomfortable, but weighted with everything unsaid. Sera, he began, then stopped, started again. I need to ask you something. But first, I need you to understand that there's no pressure, no expectation. You're free to leave whenever you want. And I'll make sure you have resources, protection, whatever you need. Dominic. I touched his hand. What is it? He took a breath. Then, to my absolute shock, he slid off the bench and onto one knee in front of me. What are you doing? I demanded, heart suddenly racing. Something I should have done from the beginning. His eyes met mine, silver, gray, and absolutely certain. I'm asking. Not commanding, not assuming. Asking. Asking what? Stay. His hand found mine, held it like it was precious. Not as my guest, not as someone under my protection. Stay as my partner, my mate, my equal. He paused. My choice, if I'm yours. Tears pricked my eyes. You're an alpha king. You don't kneel to anyone. I kneel to you. Simple. Honest. Because you're not anyone. You're everything. And I don't want a prize or a possession or some omega who exists to validate my status. I want you. Stubborn, fierce, incredible you. The woman who stabs assassins with corkscrews and argues with councils and saves my life repeatedly while insulting my self-preservation skills. I laughed through tears. They are pretty terrible. See? This is what I need. Someone to keep me honest. Someone to fight beside me, not behind me. Someone who'll tell me when I'm being an idiot. His thumb brushed across my knuckles. I'm offering partnership, Sera. Real partnership. You'll have voice in pack decisions. Autonomy over your own life. The freedom to choose, always. I'll never cage you. I'll never own you. I'll just love you, if you'll let me. You love me? The words came out whisper, soft, completely, irrationally. Since the moment you looked at me like I was just a man instead of a title. He smiled. Probably before that, if we're being honest. My wolf knew from the first second. Your wolf has terrible timing. My wolf has excellent taste. I looked at him, this powerful alpha, this king, kneeling in front of me like I was the one with all the power, offering me everything and asking for nothing except the chance to love me. Every fear I'd ever had screamed that this was a trap. That love was always a cage. That staying meant losing myself. But looking into his eyes, I didn't see a cage. I saw a partnership. I saw choice. I saw home. I have conditions, I said finally. Hope blazed in his expression. Anything. I'm not changing who I am. Not softening or submitting or becoming some political accessory who smiles and nods. I don't want you to. I'm keeping my independence, my ability to leave if things go wrong. The door stays unlocked. Always. And if we do this, if I accept we're equals, in everything, I'm not your subject. I'm your partner. Yes. No hesitation. Complete certainty. Partner. Equal. Forever, if you'll have me. I pretended to consider, even though my wolf was howling with joy, and my heart had made this decision days ago. Okay, I said simply. Okay? He looked almost afraid to believe it. Okay, I'll stay. I'll be your partner. Your mate. Your equal pain in the ass who calls you out when you're being dramatic. I'm not dramatic. I raised an eyebrow. Okay. Sometimes I'm dramatic, he conceded. Then his face broke into the most beautiful smile I'd ever seen. You're staying. I'm staying. He surged up, pulled me into his arms, and kissed me with all the relief and joy and love he'd been holding back. I kissed him back, pouring everything I'd been too afraid to feel into that contact. When we finally broke apart, breathless and grinning like idiots, he rested his forehead against mine. I love you, he said again, like he couldn't say it enough. I love you too, I replied, and saying it felt like freedom instead of chains. You ridiculous, dramatic, self-sacrificing alpha king. You're alpha king. My partner, I corrected. Let's get that straight from the beginning." "Yes, ma'am." We sat there as the sun set, wrapped around each other, planning a future that I'd never thought I'd have. A future where I wasn't invisible, where I was chosen, where love meant liberation instead of captivity. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better. It was real. Epilogue Queen, not property. 6 months later, I stood beside Dominic at the annual council gathering, and the entire political landscape held its breath. Not because of him, because of me, the Omega who'd appeared from nowhere, who'd saved the Alpha King's life twice, who'd helped end a coup and rebuild a pack, who'd become his mate on her own terms, with conditions and boundaries that had shocked the traditional wolf world. I wore a dress Margaret had insisted on elegant but practical, because I'd refused anything that would restrict my movement. My hair was down, no crown, no symbols of submission, no markings of ownership, just me, Sera Whitlock, partner to an Alpha King. The whispers followed us everywhere, some scandalized, some curious, some grudgingly respectful. I didn't care about any of them. "You okay?" Dominic murmured as we took our seats at the main table. "I'm standing in a room full of alphas who'd rather I didn't exist," I replied quietly. "I'm spectacular." He smiled. "Want to leave? And miss seeing their faces when you introduce me as your equal partner in pack leadership?" "Absolutely not. You're evil. You love it. I really do." The formal proceedings began. Political maneuvering disguised as diplomatic discussion. Territory disputes. Resource allocation. The boring machinery of pack governance. Then came the moment I'd been both dreading and anticipating. The council recognizes Dominic Blackwood, Alpha King of the Western Territories, the presiding Alpha announced. And his mate. The hesitation before mate was deliberate. Insulting. Dominic's hand found mine under the table. Steadying, supporting. I stood before he could. Faced the assembled council with my spine straight and my chin high. "Sera Whitlock," I introduced myself. Partner to the Alpha King. Not his property, not his accessory. His equal in leadership and decision-making for the Western Territories. I let that sink in. Any questions? The room was so quiet you could have heard a pin drop. The presiding Alpha, a new one, since Marcus's conspirators had been removed, cleared his throat. "That's highly irregular." "So was attempting to murder an Alpha King?" I replied pleasantly. "And yet here we are, adapting." Someone in the back tried to hide a laugh. "The council has concerns," another Alpha began. "About precedent, about tradition. The council had concerns about corruption too," Dominic interrupted smoothly, standing beside me. "And about coups, and about leadership that prioritized power over pack welfare. Sera helped eliminate those concerns. I'd think you'd be grateful." "We are grateful," the presiding Alpha said carefully. "But accepting an Omega as equal in pack leadership is exactly what the Western Territories are doing," I finished. "The council can accept it or not, but it won't change. I earned my place. I'm keeping it." Silence. Then, unexpectedly, one of the older Alphas started laughing, deep, genuine amusement. "I like her," he declared. "She's got spine. The territories could use more leaders with spine, regardless of designation." "Agreed," another Alpha said. And just like that, the tension broke. Not completely, there would always be traditionalists who hated what we represented, but enough that we'd won this battle. We'd change the world gradually, one shocked council meeting at a time. Later, after the formal proceedings ended and we were finally alone in our quarters, Dominic pulled me into his arms. "You were magnificent," he said against my hair. "I was terrifying," I corrected. "There's a difference. You were both. You're always both." I pulled back enough to look at him. "Any regrets about choosing the Omega who causes political scandals?" "Not a single one." He kissed me softly. "You?" I thought about it. About the girl I'd been 6 months ago, invisible, alone, convinced love was always a cage. About the woman I'd become, seen, chosen, free, even within partnership. No regrets, I said, though I do miss the simplicity of just serving overpriced wine. He laughed. We could go back, open a restaurant, you could wait tables again, and you could wash dishes? I'd be terrible at it. You're terrible at most domestic things. That's why I have you, to do your dishes, to keep me humble. He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. To remind me that power without purpose is just noise, to be my partner in everything. That's a lot of pressure for someone who started out stealing fries. You were never just someone who stole fries. He cupped my face. You were always this. You just needed someone to see it. And you were always more than your title. You just needed someone to remind you. We stood there, two wolves who'd found each other across impossible circumstances, who'd chosen partnership over power, who'd built something real from the ashes of everything that tried to destroy us. I'd started as a waitress no one saw. An omega without pack, without purpose, without hope. Now I stood beside an alpha king as his equal. I led beside him, fought beside him, loved him. And when he looked at me, when those silver-gray eyes met mine with all the love and respect and partnership we'd built, the entire world held its breath. Not because I was his possession, because I was his choice, and he was mine. I love you, I said, because I could say it freely now, because love wasn't a cage anymore. I love you too, he replied. My partner, my mate, my Sera. Your equal, I corrected with a smile. Always. We kissed as the sun set outside our window, two halves of something finding completion, not through submission but through choice. And somewhere in the distance, I heard my wolf, that small, quiet part of me that had spent so long being invisible, finally at peace. Because we weren't invisible anymore. We were chosen. We were home. The end. Thank you for listening to another emotional, magical shifter romance here on Tina Romance Library. If you enjoyed today's story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, so you never miss more powerful, heart-gripping romance stories.